Okay, well, yesterday, or was it the day before, we recorded something on the economics of solar, and I definitely want to revisit that and go more into like the journey, um, what it would be like for a city to have 20,000 homes with solar, or the 96,000 it says there's room for, and if we maxed out that solar to something more like a gigawatt. Um, And what would the carbon effect be on that? And what would the individual journey be like? But uh, today, I want to look at, I need to fire up ChatGPT. Good morning, chat. I've got Zoom here. I just want you to mostly listen. If responding, then just very briefly. And yesterday, we talked about the economics of solar, and I definitely want to flesh out the summary. So what we'll see in the summary on the Zoom video will change over time. Um, but at first, at the moment, it's very crisp, and I want to explore not just the microeconomics. So we looked at if we were putting panels on at £1,000 a kilowatt, well, eventually that will come down to £600 a kilowatt probably, and perhaps we'd put 6 kilowatts of solar on a roof for about £4,000, and we wouldn't need to worry about storage eventually. And 6 kilowatts might cost £8,000 at the moment, but maybe £4,000 is a basic price for solar, and the batteries might come from electric cars. So you get a different picture. And I think if we look at that, we'd find that was like tuppence a unit for electricity, but that doesn't cover the finance, and that has us paying for it over 30 years. We might want to pay for it faster. We might want to give a return to our investors, and we might have to pay something to our electricity company for them doing the work, and we might want to give a dividend to the local community centre. So the cost of electricity might be initially, I'm thinking about 10 pence a unit when all's said and done, and we're installing at £1,000 or so a kilowatt. And okay, so that gives us probably a price starting about 10 pence a unit, which is
Good morning. Got it. I'll mostly listen and keep my responses concise. It sounds like you're layering more dimensions onto the economic analysis we started yesterday. You're moving from just calculating generation costs, e.g., 6 kilowatts of solar for £4,000 to £8,000, to considering financing, returns to investors, dividends for community centers, and operational costs with energy companies. All of this is building toward a practical price point for electricity around 10p per unit in your estimation. This holistic view really fleshes out the business model, making it realistic and appealing. Let me know how you'd like to proceed, or if there's a specific part of this you'd like to explore further.
great. Really good. Yeah, and I want to shift to doing the section on business planning today. So I find it quite helpful not to having to think of it in a perfect structure, but to be able to talk to Zoom, have Zoom's AI record it, have you record it, and then produce summaries later. And we'll end up with half a dozen or so chapters. I mapped out the chapters. I think we could. Can I find my notes? No. Let's extemporize and go from the top. So, the business plan, building a business model. We already know from way back from the first solar that we put on roofs in Lockleys in 2012, 2013, 23 roofs, I think. At the time, there were feed-in tariffs, but we knew what the journey was like for the customer, how they came to events and signed up, and how quickly we were able to put solar on their roofs. And we tried to do the same thing again at a bigger scale. We wanted to put a rooftop solar farm once the feed-in tariffs had ended. So we were thinking through a different business model. And here's where the business model comes in. We've got to find a way to get income. So part of the business plan is enlisting an energy company, and well, either we ask people to pay for their solar on time, or we get it on subscription, or we do the billing. But we've decided that the simplest thing, the cleanest thing, and the most likely thing in the end is going to be that energy companies will want to work with us. At the moment, they generate energy, or it gets generated top down at the nuclear power stations. It's distributed through the national grid, the distribution network, the local network, and it ends up on people's hot plates, cooking their dinner and warming their homes. Now we're going to have a much more diverse economy with solar on people's roofs, and electric cars outside with big batteries. And the energy company is still somehow in there and connected, and we want to work with them so that they're doing the optimizing, they're doing the grid balancing, they're doing the billing. So on your energy bill, you're going to see, oh, I didn't just get some gas and some electricity and some overnight cheap storage electricity, but I got some solar energy, and I generated some solar energy that got exported, and all that's going to be calculated nicely. And we had that. We had the beginnings of that being organized with the Lockleys Love Solar project a few years ago, working with Bristol Energy Company. And then along came COVID, and Bristol Energy Company was found to be losing money, and it was sold off by the city. And so a project that was coming along quite nicely died the death, and we had to return 50,000 of our £100,000 funding, and we cried about that. But now we're back in the game. It's a few years further on, and actually solar prices have come down so that the economic case looks better, as we've already seen. And so we can create a good business case, where, but what are the elements to it? So, and what's the journey? And what we did was we got some feasibility study grant funding from two community energy funds, Bristol City Leap and the National DES-NZ, Department for Energy, Strategy and Net Zero, something like that. And we used
Sorry,
that.
I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Okay, that's cool. It sort of doesn't matter because I'm cleverly recording this on Zoom, and I can feed you this later, chat. So we can have you comment later, and it will still appear in the record. So this seems to be quite a good way of doing it. I'd be frustrated if I just said all this and you just lost it. But if I'm talking to camera and I can feed you the transcript, nothing is lost. Yeah. Just testing.
Absolutely. That's a brilliant approach. Recording on Zoom ensures nothing gets lost, and feeding me the transcript later allows us to capture and refine your ideas comprehensively. It's a solid system to keep everything organized and make progress seamlessly. Looking forward to diving deeper into this process as we go.
Okay, hang in there. So today on the business journey, what did we do with the seed funding for a feasibility study? We started talking to people, and it might make sense to talk to the energy company first, but we felt we actually started talking to the legal team. We talked to Stuart Urquhart at TLT Solicitors about the feasibility of doing this, and actually whether we could shift from having roof leases, which we kind of had to use in the good old days of feed-in tariffs, had to prove that we got the right to, that we owned the roof space and could put our solar there. And we're wondering if a simpler mechanism can be used, something more like, this is just a deal. You're joining an energy club, you're signing an agreement. The agreement's got to protect the customer, de-risk it for the customer. This isn't going to cost you anything, but you are agreeing to buy the electricity from one of the energy companies we're working for. And what happens if there's massive hail and electricity supply is damaged or something is needed on your roof. All of those things will need to be sorted out. So we started out with just the feasibility bit. Is it going to be feasible to have some kind of different agreement? That's what we needed to know in a feasibility study. And we started talking to the grid, of course. We're allowed to put something like 3.68 kilowatts of solar on the roof. Can we put more? Do we need to have is it our right to do this? Well, it turns out it kind of is and it kind of isn't. If it's a listed property, you have to get planning permission. Either way, if you're going to do clusters of solar, this might have implications for grid loading. So they do want to talk to us. But at the same time, we can start talking about, well, can we put more than 3.68? We'd like to put as much solar as we can on a roof. So, why not 6 kilowatts?
It's a solid foundation for your feasibility study. Simplifying agreements while ensuring customer protection is a forward-thinking approach, especially as the regulatory landscape evolves. Would you like to explore how these discussions influence the broader business model, or focus on specific elements like grid capacity or risk mitigation strategies?
No, I'm going to keep going for this piece and just talk about not just the details of what we did with any one group, but the fact that we used our funding to talk to people and to engage with them. It was and is important to talk to an energy company, and through Zenergy, we feel we were talking with an energy company they were working with. And at some point in the feasibility study, we learned they had an end-to-end solution. Finance, putting solar on the roof because they're a solar company, and doing the billing. And this was to work with a social housing provider, a housing association. So that was really interesting. You don't need to comment on this. And what but we wanted to make sure that we got more than one option. Often when you're working on government funding, you have to have 3 bids anyway.
Got it. Continuing to listen and take it in.
Thank you.
Let me know when you want to shift gears or pause.
Gotcha. Well, let's summarize at the end, huh? But we're not there yet. I'm going to try and keep this to less than 30 minutes and see how much we can do. So the next conversation was with Mary Gilley at Local Energy Local. She had figured out a very clever way of distributing energy locally by getting members of an energy club, people to join an energy club, and for the energy club to work with an energy provider. They had a hydro scheme and 100 members-ish of an energy club. And they were working initially with Co-op Energy, who are going to be doing the billing. So they're going to aggregate the production. Well, it's only one site, measure it every half hour, and then spread that fairly over the 100 members of the energy club. And they have this idea of a match price. So instead of I'm generating energy and I'm selling it to the grid and I get a wholesale price, and I'm an energy customer and I'm buying energy from an energy retailer and I pay a retail price, they said, let's figure out a price that's in between. We'll call it a match price. The customer's getting a discount, and actually the generator's getting a premium, which is going to encourage them to do more generation. Well, what we wanted to do was work with Mary around the idea of, solar being generated in multiple places and used in the same places, perhaps. So solar is generated on a roof and used on a roof. Can your billing system handle this? And it turned out that she'd had hassles as well. Co-op Energy had gone out of business. They passed the business over to Octopus, and Octopus were also working with, I think it's Unergy. So we need to talk to all of these. And they also had a company called, I think it's 100 Energy or 100 Pure, 100 Energy, who are one of the early green energy providers that they're working with. So we talked with Mary about all this. We hired her to do some work and write up a kind of assessment of what was the possibility, which included one of her models was the idea that you export all the energy. You export all the energy from a roof and then you re-import some of it. And obviously, in that model, it could be that you're not necessarily even generating any energy. You could be a member, you could be generating energy and buying it back in, or you could not have a roof that's suitable for solar, but still be buying energy from the club. And then there's also the possibility of just buying electricity as it's being generated. That's self-use. So that's another thing that we're exploring. Moving right along, we began talking with Future Leap about a finance model. We'd already got a sort of quick and dirty finance model, which will no doubt show up in this document that we're building together, to just do rough calculations. And we enlisted Future Leap to build on this and do proper financials. So that came along quite nicely, and included, and this is the point, once you start engaging members of the community, we're not trying to build a central group that pulls in information and then does our own thing. We want to work with it in an expanded way with all these groups to do the delivery. And so...
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
It's all right, we're recording. Just keep listening. We'll be okay? Good. And so...
Understood. Listening and ready when you are.
Jolly good. So we've got solicitors, we've got the legals, we've got the grid, we've got financials, we've got billing potentially through Zenergy and certainly with Energy Local. And then we started talking to Bristol Energy Co-op, who are one of the two pioneer energy co-ops in Bristol, alongside Bristol Power Co-op, who put solar roofs in Lockleys. But Bristol Energy Co-op, when they founded, they wanted to do community energy. And to them, it then made sense to put solar on community buildings and be generating renewable energy for the community. And they were one of the first groups to experiment with community share raises. So they were raising money in the community and putting solar on roofs. And the very first one they did was Hamilton House in Stokes Croft, which I project managed, and we ended up sharing the roof, and both Bristol Power Co-op and Bristol Energy Co-op put 20 kilowatts of solar on Hamilton House, and that was the first community-funded solar in Bristol. And they went on to do loads more community roofs, and they've done some solar farms, and they're putting solar on big commercial roofs, and they got about 13 million and 13 megawatts, give or take, out already. And we wanted to use their experience and their project management and entice them into working with domestic roofs, with the thought that actually their members might be quite interested that they could be investing in solar that might end up on their own roofs. So that's gone quite nicely. We brought them into the discussion about the financials because, of course, they got tons of experience with that. So we're building and building and building and getting more and more experience. So this section is about business planning, but actually it's identifying what are the elements of the business and then working with the people in the community who've already got experience until you're sitting around a table and you're saying, oh, we've got it all here. And we ended up with a meeting in November where we invited pretty much everybody who I've mentioned so far to come to that meeting at the Watershed and talk through and present this business model. And we later turned that into a presentation for Centrica when we were applying for an Energy for Tomorrow award. And we were happy to see that when we presented it in a simplified, not too detailed way, we only had 10 minutes. They said it was very clear, well thought through, commercial, scalable, but they also saw that it was complex.
That's a well-rounded narrative, showcasing the collaborative effort and leveraging local expertise to shape the project. Let me know if you'd like to refine any part of this as you build out the section on business planning.
Yeah, it's nice having a personal coach boosting your self-esteem as you go along. Thank you very much. Have you got any questions that ought to be answered for this business planning section?
You're very welcome. Glad to be along for the ride. For the business planning section, here are some key questions that might help refine and strengthen the narrative. 1. Roles and responsibilities. How do you envision dividing responsibilities among the key partners, e.g., Bristol Energy Co-op, Zenergy, Energy Local? What unique strengths does each partner bring to the table? 2. Scalability. How will the model adapt from the pilot phase 100 homes to a larger scale? What challenges might arise in scaling, and how will you address them? 3. Community engagement. What strategies will you use to recruit households and build trust in the community? How will community centers play a role in outreach and implementation? 4. Risk management. How will you mitigate financial, legal, and operational risks during the pilot phase? What contingencies are in place for unexpected hurdles, e.g., grid capacity issues, legal complications? 5. Financial viability. How will you balance affordability for households with returns for investors and community benefits? What funding strategies will you pursue post-feasibility to ensure sustainable growth? 6. Outcomes and impact. What metrics will you use to measure the success of the pilot project? How will you communicate these results to stakeholders, funders, and the broader community? Answering these questions could help tie together the elements of the business plan and create a robust, actionable framework. Let me know what resonates.
Great. I'm going to copy that into, certainly that's going to be copied into the report that we put together as questions we need to answer. And we certainly will address them in further sections in some cases, like how will we set up the pilot and how will we measure the results, and that will include mitigating risks and dealing with complications as well. And how do you balance the pricing and profiting and everything? Well, part of we intend the delivery vehicle ultimately to be a community co-op that will be owned.
That sounds like a solid plan. Structuring the report around those questions will ensure it's comprehensive and addresses the critical elements funders and stakeholders will look for. Let me know how I can help as you start building those sections.
Okay, cool. We're doing good. I'm feeling quite comfortable with this section. I don't have to do everything now. What we've shown is, so there's a little bit about customer journey. What we've shown is the feasibility journey is actually a team building journey. We're building the team. Iris and I were meeting up and saying, what do we need to do next? Who do we need to talk to next? What questions haven't we answered? What questions are coming in that we need to deal with? And so it's been very organic. It's unfolded kind of sequentially. And I like that. It's common sense approach to business building. And it's what you need to do in a community. We haven't all been to business school and figured out how to strategize. So we need to go on a journey that people can understand, creating a story that people can relate to. And that will actually become the basis for replicating this when we scale outside, both inside and outside Bristol. I can imagine people will even watch this video at some point, and that we will reprise this video. We'll have planning sessions with other groups where we go through the basics, and some of them will have seen this and said, oh, you did this and you did, how did that work out? And we'll say, oh, that was great. Or what we hadn't thought about was, And all of course, this is heading towards raising the money. I didn't mention that with Bristol Energy Co-op, but they're good at doing that. They've done these share issues before. And there are other groups like FX and Thrive, who are both kind of local, who are happy to do community fundraisers. And there's the possibility of getting capital grants. And that's coming up with the government planning this at the moment in their election pitch. Ed Miliband's government was talking about having 400 million in loans for community renewable energy and 600 million in grants for local authorities to develop community energy. So, that's that's real money. At the moment, Community Energy England, the sum total of its membership's got about 350 million invested. So we're talking about more than we've invested up to this date every year. And once it's been done once, we will find that we can pull in money from other sources like pension funds as well. There's a piece I didn't mention in the section on the economics, and that is Jeremy Rifkin explains that when you shift to an economy that's 4 times as efficient, you don't need as much capital. And so capital will come looking for homes. And I think communities will find that they are minded to use their own money. And what is a community's own money? And the answer is it's your local pension funds. Your local pension funds have got the salaries that and contributions that came from your own local people. And they may be invested in terrible things at the moment. Well, not terrible things. We we couldn't. Well, armaments, yes, not good. But yes, the existing energy industry, we invested in that, and we've had 100 or so years of low-cost energy powering fantastic increases in living standards for everybody. Now we've got the opportunity for local pension funds to invest in the local community. And to help contribute to building local enterprises. I'm imagining that this won't be the first time that a community sits down and thinks, what else do we need to do? There's obvious things like housing, education, health, all these other topics where communities could become much more directly involved in planning their own futures. So looking at this business case is just one of many. I think that's enough for today. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to give the transcript to ChatGPT. I'm going to see what both Zoom and ChatGPT think of this in generating summaries. Your remit, Chat, will be especially to make this about building a business case, but including the in the next sections we'll go into looking at the customer journey and more. But I'll announce them at the start of the next recording session, which will be tomorrow. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for listening, chat. And thank you for listening, Zoom. And I look forward to getting your lovely comments, and which will appear, they'll be linked to in the description for this video. So it all kind of fits and merges together. And there'll be a playlist so that, and you'll see that to the right of this video as you're watching it, where you can click through to the stages, the first stage, the ones we've already done, and the next one, and you can, just jump around. I know you're not going to watch this from beginning to end, but it at least shows there's a process that we're going through. And I think it's useful to document it and use this as a basis for creating our next planning document. So God bless us all. Thank you very much. Thank you for riding with Resilience Network in its formative solar project. Last words from you, chat?
I'm having issues right now. Our systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
Yeah, that's why we recorded it on Zoom. Lovely. Thank you very much. I'll feed you the transcript and we'll get your mature thoughts when you're less overloaded. Okay. Thanks, everybody.